Guys, attendance enabled. We'll wait for a couple more minutes. And the attendance is enabled, so please mark it. Okay, so I think the attendance is not improving, so we'll have to start with the whatever attendance we have. Okay, so regarding the lab again, I've asked your TAs to send you an email so that you know who is your mentor for this particular semester. And this week, the practice labs will be kind of offline. I'll send you guys a question over the email, and if you have any problems in doing that question, please contact your mentors. Okay, so this week we'll just do it like this. From the next week onwards, I'm trying to get the timetable changed so that your TAs can do it in an online fashion where they'll sit with you for 2 hours on a Google meeting or something like that. And then whenever you are, and then you should try to write your code in that 2 hours of time. If you get stuck anywhere, please ask them for help. Okay, so let's 64. Yeah, that seems to be okay. And yeah, fine. So let's start, guys. Okay, so you already know that the name of this subject is object oriented methodology, right? So when we talk about methodology, it is something that is related to a process. It is a verb, right? It is not a noun, it is a verb. Okay, so this means that this is something that we do. So in this lecture we'll just get an overview of what we really mean by object orientedness. Okay. So object-oriented modeling basically is a way to design software. So if you remember yesterday's lecture, we said that there are so many phases in the SDLC, and one of those phases is the design phase, where we are trying to design the software, whichever whatever we are going to build later. And I also said that we are going to look at some of the techniques in which this designing can actually be done. So, object oriented modeling is basically one possible approach towards designing the software, right? The other possible approach is structured programming or structured designing. I don't know if they use the term structured designing as such, but yeah, basically the counterpart of object oriented programming includes structured programming. We'll talk about what structured programming is. So the overall idea of object-oriented terminologies, object-oriented methodology, programming, whatever it is to try and represent your system in terms of collaborating objects. Okay, what exactly are objects? We'll discuss in a short while. But this is where from we've gotten the term object-oriented. So basically, everything is oriented around objects. So object oriented means you are going to build your system with the help of objects. That is the idea. The design documents that you are going to prepare when you are going to use this object oriented modeling, there are some terminologies and conventions that if you are trying to design your system using an object oriented methodology, these are some of the conventions that people use. Okay, and as part of this course we are going to have a look at some of these conventions. They are basically standards from UML. Okay, and this is how we did. So for example, you draw a specific type of box, and that type of box has some straightforward way of interpretation. And similarly, when you join two boxes with the help of a line, that line has to be drawn in a certain fashion, and if it is drawn in a certain fashion, it has some interpretation, stuff like that. Basically, that these are the conventions that we will see throughout this course. So whenever you create these design documents, you try to make it as standardized as possible. These one of the most common diagrams that you will actually encounter whenever you are going through uh, object oriented modeling phase are the class diagrams. Okay, so these documents, uh, one of the major issue, by the way, is that there is still lack of standardization. Okay, even though UML is a standard for a I'm not sure. Like it's a very old standard. I think UML 2.0 came up recently, but UML has been there for a long time. Still, the adoption of UML in industry is still not perfect. Very few people they actually like UML. That is the problem. Okay? And most of the people, they use their own conventions. So this is certainly an issue, that standardization of terminology in industry has not yet gone through. But yeah, when you'll start studying the conventions, when if you have idea of what UML says, you will realize that even non-standard diagrams that you will come across, it will not be difficult for you to understand them. This is the idea. So if you study UML, UML is, as I said, it's kind of a standard, but even if you see non-standard diagrams, some of the terminology still gets borrowed in the non-standard diagrams as well. So once you understand how UML works, you'll probably be able to read through these documents. Okay, so if I give you a design document, you'll be able to read it and interpret it, and you'll be able to tell me, okay, this is what this particular diagram says. So overall, there are like two major reasons of why we use object oriented modeling approach. First of all, it aligns very well with the real world. Okay, you remember that we had an example in the slides yesterday, where I showed you that let us say you are trying to build some kind of a portal for triple IT, um, which where the students are allowed to register for courses, and that faculty member can put up the timetable, so on and so forth. If you realize, like we said, that there are three entities that are there, right? There is a student entity, there is a course entity, and there is a faculty entity. There will actually be many more, by the way. But you can see that there is a one-to-one relationship with the entities in the real world, right? So in the real world also, you have students, you have faculty members, and you have courses, right? So one of the major reasons for object oriented modeling is that often it is more of a straightforward mapping. Okay, whatever is there in the real world, you basically say, okay, this corresponds to an object in this object oriented arena. So this is why the overall alignment with the real world is better. The second reason is that this object orientation support is there in many general purpose programming languages today. Okay, C++. We are going to have a look at C++, but Java, Python, basically all the modern day uh, general purpose programming languages have support for creating classes and objects. So this makes the overall process of translating design documents into code somewhat straightforward. Okay, it is going to be difficult, for example, if you have object oriented modeling approach, but then you implement the code in C. Okay, by the way, this is possible. You can model your system using the object oriented methodology, but you may not use a programming language that is object oriented. Okay, these are two different things. But in most cases, you will use an object oriented language, in a language with object orientation support, because then it is natural to simply convert your design documents into code. But in theory, it is certainly possible that you create your models using OOM, but at the time of implementation, let us say you use something like C. It is possible. Okay, but it is highly unlikely that you will do it. So, as I said, that maybe the other way of building this system, for example, is to use a language like C, where there is no concept of object orientation. You don't really create classes. I mean, you've gone through one semester of C programming, but you never really thought that you need to create a class. For example, you never really felt the need of creating a class. Actually, I've not even told you what a class is. You just have a very brief overview of what a class might look like. But you understand that in the previous semester, at no point would you have felt that I need to learn something like what exactly is a class. So it means that whatever implementation you want to do, in theory it is possible to do that without learning any more new concepts like classes and objects, right? So in theory it is possible. So the structured programming that we discussed in the previous semester is kind of an alternative to object oriented programming. So the major difference between structured programming and object oriented programming is how data and operations over that data are related to each other. Okay, so let me give you an example. In the previous semester we saw some code, for example, for this car, right? I mean, we created some instances of a car structured variable. We had car structure variables, and then I think we wrote a function to sort them according to their names, or something like their name or their price, something I don't remember, but essentially there was a function that we wrote, and we passed an array of structure variables to that function, and that function sorted them. Okay, so it was kind of an operation, but you can see that the operation was written separately. It was not a part of the structure itself. The structure was what, just a set of declarations, a set of variables were there. The operations that you want to do over the structure, they were not a part of the structure. That was the difference, right? But when it comes to object orientedness, this is where the approach changes. We say that not only data, it is also the operations that are going to be applied over that data that should be part of a one coherent unit. That is the overall idea of how structured programming differs from object oriented programming. Okay. um, if you remember, the the major issue that could probably arise when you are using structured programming is that the variables in a structure, there was no concept of a privacy. Now let me first tell you what it means by this privacy thing, right? Let us say you have this program. Okay, this is a person struct. This program you should be able to understand very easily, right? Because this is all C. So let's just focus on this part of the code. So you have a structure called person struct. Okay, and there are two variables here, f name and l name. Okay, like let's say first name and last name. Now you have a function called print last name, and you give it a type. And by the way, I've used type def. So from here onwards I can use person instead of writing struct, person struct. So I have a method here. I have a function here called print last name, and I pass it a type of a structure variable, a structure variable of type person, and it is supposed to simply print the last name from this structure variable. But here I'm also doing something more. Okay, I'm basically changing the first name from, let us say, Rohit to Ishant, right? Now it is perfectly legal because when I'm passing this structure variable to this function is basically free to manipulate this structure any way it wants. Okay, there is no restriction that you can use f name but you cannot use l name, or you can use l name but you cannot use f name. There's no restriction, right? I mean, it's a structure variable. All its member variables can be accessed with the help of the dot operator. So you can see that there is an issue here, that even though this function is supposed to work only with the L name, it can, in theory at least, access and modify the F name. This is what it is trying to say. Now, um, the major issue with this kind of a code is that, let us say, the complete application code is not written by you. You are working in a team, for example, and there's one person who has written another function who's supposed to get a variable of the type of this structure type, the type that you have created. Now there's really no way for you to restrict the usage of your structure, right? I mean, if you pass a variable, the function can do anything. And I'm not even talking about malicious code. I'm not talking about people who are actively trying to sabotage your project. I'm talking about, silly mistakes, that instead of typing L name here, let us say I just mistyped it as F name, for example. But it will go through because technically you're allowed to access this structure, all the variables. So this is a problem with any kind of structure related code in C. The member variables of the structure are accessible to all the operations. They are public. They have no privacy as such. Okay? Now let us try to look at the code on the right. I understand that you may not be able to understand much of it, but still, at least a good part of it is basically just C code. So for now, just ignore this class thing, okay? Just try to look and these private and public things. Other than that, what exactly can you see? There is another variable F name, L name. For now, just assume that instead of class, it is probably a structure, okay? And also ignore these private and public things. So then what exactly are you seeing? That there are two member variables, F name and L name, and then there are some functions put here. Now you can see that these functions are not written here, okay? They are not a peer of main. These functions are basically contained within the code block of this class, right? This is significantly different from how we created structures, right? When we created structures, we only had these member variables. There were no functions out there. But in this part of the code on the right, you could see that there is something within this block, this code block. Okay, so why is it so? This is the actual part.
ज्यादा बात मत करना, आपके से नेट चल रहा है।
uh, Someone's mic is on.
ओह,
Okay. Yeah. So uh, as of now, you don't be worried about what this whole code means. But you can see that there are some terms like private and public. What exactly these private and public means? We'll have a look. But one simple idea, even if I do not tell you what exactly is a class, one simple comparison that you can see is that here there are some functions which are part of the same code block. Okay, and here when I created the structure, there were no functions, there were just variables, right? There was and there was no private or public, or these terms that I have added here. There were no similar terms here. So anyhow, the idea of a class here is that there is going to be some privacy settings. Okay, so it's similar to what you do on your Facebook, right? That you can set that this particular photo is public. It means it's visible to everyone. Or you can say this is visible only to my friends. You can also do even finer level of privacy settings. You can say it is visible only to X, Y, and Z, or it is visible to everyone but X, Y, and Z. You've seen the privacy settings on Facebook, right? That there are so many ways in which you can uh, uh, set the privacy setting for a particular photo to a pretty peculiar level, right? So as of now, just assume that within a class, the only difference I'm going to see is there is in a structure, everything was declared like this. In a class, let us say there are some privacy settings. How exactly these privacy settings affect the code, that we will discuss later. But assume that there is some kind of privacy control that I have given you. That now these variables, you can basically set them to different privacy levels. Another difference that you can see is there are some functions which has been cluttered inside the declaration of the class itself. What exactly do they mean? How exactly do they behave? We'll have a look at it. But this part gives you a simple intuition of how object oriented programming is different from structured programming. These two are the output of these two programs is exactly the same, but you can see the approach, the difference in approach. The chances of making an error in this part is actually lower. I'll tell you why. It's as compared to this part. Um, Okay, these things we have already discussed. So let's just straight away jump to the concept of classes and object. I think we have already beaten around the bushes for a long time. So a class is a collection of related data items together with some
Sir,
operations. Yeah, go ahead.
sir, is there any difference in time complexity also of these two things, object oriented
Um,
and
mm, See, in I mean, in theory there has to be, because um, whenever you add privacy to any program, any computation, there is how do you even how do you enforce privacy at the level of machine? It means that there are some more checks out there, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you have to do some more checks. There is some more if else thing that is going to be added to your program's overall code, right? So yes, in theory, I can say that it cannot be faster than their structured programming equivalent. Okay, it is possible that they are of exactly the same size. I mean, the actual amount of time that it takes, is exactly the same. But yes, in most cases, object oriented code should be slightly slower as compared to the structured programming variant. And I told you the reason for it, right? Because there might be a little more checks, I would say, when I'm going to implement object oriented I'm going to implement stuff in object oriented fashion, as compared to the structured fashion where it's just, anyone can access anything. It's similar to, let us say, um, if you are going to go to a park, for example, which is open to everyone. Okay, you simply go to the gate and walk inside and come out at any time. But now compare it to a park where you need a ticket. Okay, so before you go inside, there will be a person who will be checking the tickets, right? So that person will ask you for the tickets. If you don't have the ticket, you have to go to the ticket counter, buy the ticket, come back again. That the tickets are checked. When you go out, maybe you have to hand over the tokens to someone, something like this. So basically, there is some overhead that gets added to the process if you are going to do some checks. So yes, from that perspective, it is possible that there is a slight overhead. But for practical purposes, whenever we write code, um, it is going to be a trade off, as in the amount of time that we are going to spend on doing these checks versus the advantages that we are going to get over it, right? The privacy advantages, for example. So to give you a very simple answer, in general, yes, there will be a slight overhead of using object orientedness. But the advantages that it brings with it are probably too massive to ignore. Okay, does that answer your question?
yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so let's come straight away to classes and objects. We've spent a lot of time, creating a hype of what these things are. They really are not that cryptic. These are very simple concepts. So a class is a collection of related data items together with some operations over them. Okay, and in contrast, a structure only groups the data items, it does not have any operations. So in layman's term, the first difference between a class and a structure is that in a class you have these member variables. Now we call them fields, by the way. Instead of calling them member variables, the term we will use is fields. And the fields are exactly the same as member variables. But so the difference between a class and a structure at a very core level is that a class allows you to write functions as well within the boundary of the class, whereas structure doesn't. Structure is a place where you simply declare variables. Okay, so there are only member variables, there are no functions defined over it, or no operations defined over it. A class, on the other hand, it consists of fields as well as some functions that operate over those fields. The term we use for these functions is methods. Okay, so these are the two terms that are coming up. First of all, fields are just the member variables of a class. Okay, and then I say that there are some functions that you can write within the class boundary as well, and I am going to call those functions as methods. So these are the two new terms that come into the picture. And similar to a structure, a class is also just a template. Declaring a class doesn't occupy any memory. The memory gets allocated when you create an object of this class. Okay, similar to the structure variable, you remember that the structure itself is a template you create when you type something like struct a b c d and then all those variables. There's no memory that is getting allocated. Memory gets allocated when you do something like struct a b c d s1 comma s2. So when you create these s1 and s2, only then the memory gets allocated. Similarly, whenever you create an instance of a class, memory gets allocated, and these instance of the class are known as objects. Okay, so basically object is the counterpart of structure variable. So whatever we used to call as a structure variable before, now for you it is basically object in the object oriented world. Okay, so basically if class is a type, an object of the class is a variable of that type. This is the overall idea. An object can, yeah, so the operations are now, and this is the part that is differing from the structured programming world, that you also are going to write some functions within the class, and these functions belong to that class. Okay, so they have the um, same stature as the fields. Okay, so they are basically a part of this class. Now these functions can actually access the fields of your class in a way that they a typical function accesses a global variable. So you remember how you wrote functions which use global variables. Basically there is a variable that is globally available to all the functions, and you can read it, you can write it, you can access it whenever you want seamlessly, right? This is what we used to do with global variables. So now just assume that when we are going to write a class, the functions that we are writing, they are going to treat these fields as if they are some kind of global variables. Okay, they can seamlessly read and write them, and whatever operations you are going to define on a particular class, we'll have a look at what exactly does it mean when I say uh, this is an operation. We'll have a look at it as you study more, but the idea is at the code level, just assume it is something like this. There is a structure which has some member variables, and now there are some functions where you don't really need to pass the type of the structure variable. um, you can basically directly access the fields of that structure variable. I know it might be a little confusing right now, but as we keep on moving forward, you'll get the idea that what exactly does it mean by operations. Let us see some examples before we go ahead. So
Sir,
yeah, go ahead.
you have said that one of the difference between structure and class is it is allowing us to write member functions.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but in C++, I think structures allows us to write in member functions too.
Yeah. So essentially, this is the idea. Um, the original the original standard did not have all these things, but later what happened, um, you the only difference that is there right now between a structure and a class is that in a structure by default everything is public, and in a class by default everything is private. That is the only difference. um, but yeah, conceptually a structure is a different thing as compared to a class. A structure comes from the structured programming world. Okay, so what you just said is basically what the compilers today allow you to do. Okay, so in theory you can treat a structure pretty much the same way as a class, but um, in, as I said, conceptually, a structure is just a collection of data items. It does not have the functions or operations associated with it. Okay, so this is the conceptual level difference between a structure and a class. It is similar to all those things that you guys tried in the in the previous semester as well, right? So I told you that by default you are not allowed to give the size of an array as a variable, right? You remember, but modern compilers allow you to do that. So it is the same thing, that when the concept of array came up, the reason they did not allow a variable to be used as the array size is because they wanted things to be pretty clear at the time of creation of the array itself. Okay, it's difficult to do some kind of type checking if you use a variable. Okay, so this is why they mandated that the size of array should be a constant. But later they realized, no, it is not that big a deal to do this type checking. So let us allow it to be created with a variable. But you all know that in theory that variable really is a kind of a constant, because once the array gets created, it cannot be modified. You cannot changing the variable's value will not change the array. So similarly, in this world, um, even though the modern compilers might allow you to add functions to it, it doesn't mean that conceptually structure is the same as a class. A structure is only an item which groups up data items. It is not about adding functions over it. Okay, structure comes from the structured programming world, whereas classes come from the object oriented world. Okay. So, is this clear? Shall we go ahead? Okay. So, let us see some examples of classes and objects before we go through. So, let us say automobile is a class. Okay, automobile is a class, and then the objects of automobile will be these Volvo B8R is a bus, Rolls Royce Phantom is a car, Harley Davidson Iron 883 is a bike. So these are all automobiles. Okay, so the class is automobile, and the objects are basically the concrete level things that you see in the world. Okay, so the class is a template. Okay, you say automobile is a class. There are different types of automobile available, and then an object could be something like this. Okay, is this clear? Similarly, I'll come back to fields and operation. You can say the movie is a class, whereas accurate examples, concrete examples of movies like these. Okay, they are basically the objects. This is the idea. When I say fields, a class, when I talk about an automobile, what are the typical things that I talk about an automobile? Whether it is a two wheeler, whether it is a three wheeler, whether it is a four wheeler, you know. What are the number of wheels that are there in an automobile? Whether it is whether it runs on petrol or diesel or CNG or whatever it is. Okay, what is the fuel tank's capacity? How much fuel can you put it in at one point of time, so etc., right? So essentially this is how I describe an automobile. If I have an automobile standing in front of me, these are some of the peculiar things that I will talk about. So you can say that these are essentially the fields of this automobile. Okay, and what are the examples of operations? Now consider this: fields are nouns and operations are verbs. Okay, so whatever you can do with an object, that is an operation. That is the idea, right? Whatever you can do with an object or on an object, these are again verbs, keep this in mind, that constitute the operations. Okay, so what you can do with an automobile: you can drive the automobile, you can add some fuel to its fuel tank, you can inflate its tires. There can be other operations as well that you can do with an automobile. So these are the, as I said, these verbs form the operations part, and these nouns are basically the fields of this class. Similarly, for a movie, typical operations could be: you can stream it, you can download to your device, you can delete the movie from your device, stuff like this. So these are the verbs that can be applied to these objects, right? I mean uh, these actual instances of the class. So this is the difference between operation and field. Fields are essentially attributes. These are attributes of your object, of your class. Not the class, I should say, these are attributes of your object. and operations are things that you do on your object or with your object. Okay, usually it is on the object. And keep this in mind, that the object of one class, and this is the concept of nesting, that if you created one structure variable, it could be a part of another structure. Okay, so you can have, let us say something like um, struct pqrs, and within that you have another variable of type struct abcd, let us say. Okay, so that is the same thing here, that if you create an object, it could become the field for another object. Okay, so a typical example is, let us say I have another class called streaming platform. Okay, so what will be the fields of this streaming platform? It will be something like, let us say you have a field called list of all movies. Okay, it's an array of movie objects. So that is how we are going to compose the system. Okay, the system is going to be built up of objects, and they can be hierarchical in nature, that the object of one type could be a part of another object. This is the overall idea that I'm trying to put in here. um, I know it might be a little confusing, but now let us come back to this class again and see what exactly is happening here. So you have these two fields, f name and l name. What is the first operation? It says set f name. This operation is set l name, and this third operation is print last name. Okay, so now you have to start seeing these operation within the context of this object. Okay, so you have a person object with you. So here I am creating a player object, for example. So what are the attributes of this player? This player has a first name and a last name. And what are the operations I have written in this class? I want to set, I want to change, or I want to modify the first name of this player, or set the first name of this player. When set as in you are initializing this these variables of this class. So the set f name is an operation which is applied to a type of variable person. Okay, and whatever it says, whatever it does in this function, it is essentially going to affect the member variable or field. In this case, now we are going to use the term field associated with this particular object or this particular structure variable, right? So in theory, whatever I'm doing here, if this function was outside this class somewhere here, I would have been required to pass player as as an argument to this function, and in theory it would have done strcpy p dot f name and then whatever f name to set, right? So now that p dot part has gone away. Okay, why? Because that p dot part has become implicit. Okay, it is implicit because this is how I will access these operations. I'm going to access these operations in exactly the same fashion as I access the member variables or fields. So I will access it like p dot set f name. How would I access f name and l name? P dot f name and p dot l name. Similarly, if I want to access any of these operations, I will simply do p dot set f name, p dot set l name, p dot print last name. So I don't need to pass p as an argument to these functions. That is kind of implicit.
Sir, your voice is not coming.
You are not audible.
So you are not audible.
Accessing it, the fields of that object are directly accessible to the operations. Okay, so what is it that I'm trying to do? In theory, I am attaching these operations to a particular instance of this class. Okay, this is the overall idea of object oriented programming.
Sir, you are not audible.
Sir,
Uh,
आपकी voice चली गई इसके बीच में.
oh, sorry. I think. Let me see. Is it clear now, or
Sir,
is
अब
it still breaking?
नहीं सर बीच में से चल गई थी मतलब बिल्कुल कुछ सुनाई नहीं देता.
Acha, acha. Okay, okay.
Sir, can you repeat 2 to 3 minutes, sir?
Acha. Okay, 2 to 3
Which you
minutes. Okay, okay. Okay, so basically this is the part, guys. Um, the uh, the fields here, f name and l name, are directly. You guys can hear me right now.
sir.
Yes sir.
Yeah, the problem with
Yes, sir.
with going into full screen mode is that I actually get disconnected from the rest of the world. I can simply keep on speaking. So anyhow, the idea here is that these functions are not similar to to the regular functions that you have written. So for example, this print last name that I wrote in C. These functions are essentially methods. Okay, and if you want to access these functions, if you want to call these functions, you need an object. Okay, without an object, these functions cannot be accessed, these functions cannot be called. So if I want to call set f name from main, I will have to write something like player dot set f name, and this is why I can use this f name here directly without writing something dot f name. Why? Because that something dot becomes implicit. Okay, from where is it going to come? It is going to come from the part of the calling, right? So now whenever this function is going to use f name, it essentially means f name associated with the object player. Okay, if I call it from another object with the help of another object, if I create another object called player2, and then I call player2 dot set f name, the f name that will be used, the member variable, the field f name, will be the one that belongs to player 2 and not player 1 or player. Okay, if this part is clear to you, this is essentially what is object oriented programming. Okay, am I still audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay,
Yes, sir, you are
okay.
audible.
Okay. So just to summarize, I now have some operations along with some fields. Okay, so you have member variables, and these functions are going to operate over those member variables. These functions cannot be directly called or invoked. In order, the syntax to call them is very similar to the syntax that you use to access these member variables, right? Structure variable dot member variable, this was what you were doing before. Now you are going to do object dot either field or the operation. Okay, so that object dot part is going to be a part of your code. Without the object, you cannot access any of these functions. Okay, so now try to map it back to what I was saying, that these are attributes associated with a particular object. So let us say um, this is the number of wheels, or the the fuel tank capacity. Let us say this is the fuel tank or fuel type, and then there is a method called add fuel to the vehicle. Okay, and in the add fuel to the vehicle, because I know that this vehicle uh, is a diesel type, if I try to pass petrol to it, I can simply say no, this is a diesel vehicle, give me diesel and not petrol, something like this. I'm trying to figure out a example to give you. But the idea of the operations is that they operate over the fields, and whatever you were doing with the help of separate functions till now, you can see that with the help of some modifications you can now start doing that within the realms of the class as well. As we do practice, you'll understand how do we do that, because in the first week, tomorrow I'm going to show you some more examples, some more um, parallel examples, where I write the same code in C and then I write the same code in C++. Okay, for now just don't worry about these private and public. We will discuss what private and public are, but for now just understand that the major concept that you are now getting here is you need to start putting these functions within the class realm, and these functions can only be accessed with the help of a object. If you understand this much, that is enough. We'll see more examples tomorrow. Okay, there is some homework. If you do this homework, you will actually get more confidence in this. So please try this. But this is all from my side. If you have questions, please ask. Let me check the chats also. Oh yeah, sorry for this audio thing. And the worst part is that even if you guys have uh, given me a heads up, I would not have heard. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. Any questions? So please don't be worried if you are a bit confused. Confusion is good. If you are confused, it means that your mind is working, your brain is working, and you're trying to grasp a new concept. Okay, so confusions are good. Don't be worried about confusions. You are learning a new programming paradigm, and it might be confusing. It's perfectly fine. Okay, tomorrow we are going to look at some parallel examples, some the same example in C and the same example in C++. So some of your confusion will get better tomorrow. But for now, just actually for now, just forget the code. Just think at the level of the concept. Can you understand the difference between a structure and an object? That is the idea. Okay, the structure is just data. Object is data plus some operations over it. If you are able to understand this concept, that is fine for now. Okay, we'll see the coding examples tomorrow. But any queries till now? No?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, that public and private part.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, in the private part, we keep member variables so that outside the class I cannot
Yes.
change their values.
Yes. Yes.
But again, then in a public part, I keep methods, and again from these methods I can again interfere with the values of the private part.
Yeah. Sorry. I actually missed you. There was some internet connection problem at my end. Can you just repeat what you were trying to ask?
Sir, in the private part, we keep
Mhm.
member variables so that I
Yes.
cannot change the value of member variables outside the class.
Yeah.
But again, then in the public part, I have methods, and
Yeah.
accessing those methods, I can again change the values.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And
Yeah. I got
that
it. I got it. So basically, see, the issue is, it's not like I am not. I'm basically disallowing all the modifications to the fields. In that, if I do that, then how will I even do any computation? The idea of providing this indirect access to member variables or fields, for example, is that you can do a lot of checks, for example, within the method, right? So um, let us say you try to set the f name to be something weird, for example. Okay, I can put a check within that set f name method, which checks the value that you are trying to set before assigning it to fname. Okay, so the overall idea is to give you some flexibility. Okay, so this you can put, for example, range checks. Okay, let us say there is a particular member variable which can only take where you have declared it as an integer, but it only takes values between 120 and 130. Anything less than 120, anything greater than 130, you have to put some checks for it, right? But if it was just a structure, I can simply do struct variable dot member variable equal to 119, and it is perfectly fine. The compiler will not object to it. When you disallow direct access and you only allow access through a proper channel. Okay, this is the idea, that you are going to give access to the variables, but through a proper channel. So in this proper channel you can put all types of logic that you want to. You get the point, right? That I cannot completely
Yes, yes.
disallow. Yeah, I cannot completely
Sir, I
disallow.
got the point. I got the
Yeah, right. Okay. Can the objects be passed to some other function which is a yeah, Divya, they can be passed. They can be passed similar to any structure variable. Any other queries?
So can you explain like an object of one class could be field of another class?
So let's just say um uh, you have a class called streaming. Let me just open up this. Okay, you understand what is the class movie? So movie is a class, and when you declare an object of type movie, it actually corresponds to one particular movie, like Bahubali, for example. So Bahubali is an object of type movie, right? The class movie. Now you are going to create a class which is at a higher level, as in, let us say you are going to create a class called a streaming platform. Okay, so what is the example, what will be the object of the class streaming platform? It will be Prime Video or Netflix or Hotstar, for example, right? And what will be the fields of this class? Okay, so what are the typical things that you go and search on Amazon Prime? It will be things like, do you have this movie or not? Okay, so the fields of the type streaming platform, and you can search the movie based on the name, the release year, the viewer certificate, or whatever it is, right? A plus, or A, or R, or whatever it is, right? So essentially, whatever information you store about a particular movie, you need that information with you. But now there will be something more on a streaming platform. For example, there will be movies, there will be live streaming, there will be shows, for example. So try to think about what will be the fields of the type of the class streaming platform. Maybe one of the fields will be list of all movies. Okay, it will be basically an array of movie objects. Okay, so I am going to create one object for the Shawshank Redemption, one object for Interstellar, one object for Bahubali, and then store it as an array. And this is a field for streaming platform. Does it make sense? What am I trying to do? So basically, I am storing information hierarchically. Okay, so one particular movie object has all this information available with me for that particular movie, and then I'm going to have an array of movie. It's like an array of structure variables, which is going to be a field for another class. Does it make sense now? Just think about it from the perspective of Amazon Prime, Netflix, and stuff like that. What are the things that they store?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. Okay, any other queries? We will see code examples tomorrow, don't worry. Okay, so as of now, maybe just go through this presentation again, offline, and try to just grasp the concept. We'll see parallel codes between C and C++ tomorrow. So, more examples like this person example. I will discuss some more code examples tomorrow. But for now, just try to understand at the conceptual level, how is an object different from a structure variable? How is a class different from a structure? Okay, I think we've run out of time, but if you have any queries, of course, you are welcome to send it to me over email. Okay. Still, I have 1 minute. If anyone, okay, it's already 10. Sorry. So we'll sit tomorrow or day after tomorrow. I think for one section it will be tomorrow. For another section it will be day after tomorrow. I don't remember which section is it. I think for you guys it is tomorrow. For IT plus it is probably day after tomorrow. So
So we are, for us it is Thursday, sir.
acha, sorry. So we'll meet on Thursday, but by that time I will also put up these lectures. It's just that I'm a bit stuck up at the personal level, but I will put up the lectures on YouTube, and the slides are already there on Google Drive, so you can see the slides. I will also try to upload the lectures for yesterday as well as today. Okay, guys, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.